Hey, everybody. Welcome to Take on the World Secret Show, episode 2. First one, if you missed it, we had Jeremiah Dirt on, and we just had a blast. Whoa. Sorry about that. Hold on. See, this is what happens in the Secret Show. You're not really prepared. So I got to pause that video. So, episode 2, we got a special guest. Allan, are you with me tonight? Can you hear me, Allan?
I can hear you.
All right. Nice. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm doing real good. Just wrapping up our Feast of Unleavened Bread.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. What time? So it's you're about 2 hours behind us. So
Yeah.
it
It's
just wrapped up for you.
yeah. It's 8 p.m. Sun hasn't set though yet. It's behind the mountain just about. It's we're a little northern up here in Utah, so it'll get dark here within the next 20 minutes or so.
How'd you celebrate afterwards?
I had a beer.
Okay. So here's what happens in the Secret Show. We kind of let everybody know everything about us. So Allan had a beer. So I'm gonna sound a little square now. Ready? Okay. So, and I mentioned it in Faye and Gary's show. If you haven't checked that out on Warriors Women in Faith. Allan, I'm gonna let you guess how many beers you think I've had
In your
this
life?
week. This week and in my life. Yeah, maybe that's
well. If it's the Feast of Unleavened Bread, there's some people think that you can drink beer during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. We lean that you can't, because it does have yeast in it, and that yeast is capable of being leavened. So I'm going to say, and wine's not made with yeast, so I'm going to say this week 0, because it was the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
All right. Well, hey, that's a good one. So now you can guess all time.
All time, or like or this year, like your whole life.
Like maybe like a like high school party or something like that,
or
right?
Since you were 21, or since you turned 21.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
I'm not sure how old you are, but so
it's not that secret yet. I can't tell you guys that yet.
But I'm going to guess, based on what you're saying, that you've never drank a beer before.
Yeah, that's right. So I always practice unleavened bread. So actually, me and my wife, we actually have never had a sip of an alcoholic beverage. Now, we've had kombucha tea, things of that nature, that had like a very small amount when they first came out, but those were for health reasons. But for alcoholic beverages, we've never drank. So that's what happens on the Secret Show. I'm inviting you in tonight. You're going to probably tell some people things you never told before. Probably not, but that's kind of the point of the show.
That would be hard.
Yes.
I can't even think of anything I've never told. You got to remember, I've been here's something most people. Well, so here's the thing. I'm only a little over a year involved with the Now You See TV family, or the Take on the World family. It's only been a little over a year. I mean, barely.
Right? Yeah, so nobody knows you.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't know me unless they've gone back and they've Googled me and stuff like that. But I've been a public figure since I was 19. So that's a long time. I've been a public figure since I was 19. So there's very little that hasn't been discussed on either magazines, newspapers, press conferences, radio, or TV. Because I've been doing this public figure thing for a very long time.
So what magazine was it when you were in Scattered Few and you talked about the incident of you were giving up smoking pot, and that was a nationally syndicated magazine, which ostracized you guys or yourself? However, what magazine was that? I keep forgetting.
That was CCM magazine.
CCM? Okay, yeah. So it was the mega one, yeah.
It's the mega one. So if you don't know anything about the Christian music scene, CCM is the equivalent to Billboard or Rolling Stone. I mean, it was CCM I'm going to say was, because I don't think it really is that prominent anymore. But CCM magazine was like the top of the mountain magazine. And they, in an interview in 1991, I mentioned that I smoked marijuana, and I was in the process of quitting, and I'm constantly giving my paraphernalia and my marijuana to my pastor, giving it to him, going, help me, and everyone freaked out. So the magazine freaked out, the industry freaked out, and my peer groups, my band peers freaked out, because they thought, oh my gosh, if he's saying that about himself, he's going to expose all of us. But of course, why would I do that? That's not my business, right? Why would I say, there's no way I would ever say, hey, your favorite band XYZ drinks and does drugs. I mean, I wouldn't do that. That's one, unbiblical, two, irresponsible, three, I'm not allowed to judge another man's servant. That's not my responsibility to call those other bands out. So they got all freaked out. They thought, oh no, he's going to call us out too, which never happened.
Well,
and I would never do that.
It's because it's super prevalent.
That's what people do.
Back in the day, and still even today, I'm sure it's still real prevalent.
I bring that up in the new book. Actually, I just do discuss it on the new book. But so anyway, but here's the thing. So that was crazy, right? So radio stations started freaking out. They're not going to play my albums anymore. I mean, it was quite a disturbing situation for the industry and my career. But it's like, well, wait a second. I'm not doing this, and I'm not just saying that I'm a Christian. I actually live this out. I don't fear uncovering myself like that, because I knew, I was getting letters from people, fans that were telling me about how so on our first big record, one of the singles on that record, I think it was a top 5 Christian rock radio single. It was in the top 5, was about freebasing cocaine. I never freebased cocaine, but it was about junkies that freebase cocaine. It was called Glass God. And I was getting letters, because back then, remember, there's no internet. I was getting letters from people that were like drug addicts that were getting clean and coming to the Lord because of that song, and the fact that we were so open with everybody regarding life and our own struggles and stuff. So I wasn't worried about the guy with the cigar and the suit, industry guy, getting upset with me. I wasn't talking to him. I'm talking to the people that are buying my record, that are reading the magazine. I'm talking to the fans, that are like, oh, well, if Allan's struggling with that, and he's, trying to quit, and he's going to his pastor and because that's the stuff that was helping other people. I wasn't worried about record sales or radio play. I wasn't worried about that. Now, here's the thing. Within 8 months, I actually quit. I quit all drugs in 1992. And that press release, no one cared about that press release. No one cared about that. They only cared about the fact, oh my gosh, he admitted that he smoked pot in 91. The fact that I literally did quit less than a year later, no one cared about that. See?
Yeah, see, that's kind of,
there's your agenda.
But, the music industry, just like every aspect of the Christian industry, you're going to be held to or bound to, if you believe this, or you think that, or you have an opinion this way, or you did the wrong thing this time in your life, right? And those things end up defining us, and which kind of goes against the premise of his goodness and grace, where when we make mistakes, and we maybe believe something that's not correct, or whatever it may be, right? And we come to a different reality and a different truth. Sometimes that goes against his goodness and grace, where we get second opportunities and chances, and he's molding us, right? Yet the industry can't, and the mainstream, aspects of everything, they can't walk with you. They can't, pray with you. They can't hold your hand through the process. They can't disciple you. They can't minister to you. And that's kind of anti everything that we see scripturally, right? I
Right.
mean, when you see that, when Christ sat with the sinners, when we're talking about prostitutes, we're talking about male prostitutes, we're talking about, the elite sinners, the elite lost. And yeah, they get that second opportunity. And um, I think that's the same thing within, as we walk out his commandments. We are going to stumble, we are going to make mistakes, we are going to falter at times. And through a genuine heart, we can come back to repentance. And so the industry they don't even operate in that realm. It's a cutthroat thing. Reminds me of a story, probably one you never heard, because I once heard you say, you don't follow the Christian hip hop scene. There was an artist who was in San Diego, California, maybe not San Diego, I forget exactly, Hawthorne maybe. And the record label had told them that they kicked him off because they found out, they knew he was dealing with, the same thing, smoking pot. And, instead of holding his hand through the process, he was the biggest artist on their label. And instead of doing that, they just made a blanket statement, cutting the cord loose. And it sent shockwaves through the industry, so much so that he walked away from the scene, walked away from everything. Not sure about his faith, but people just stabbed him in the back, when he had an issue, when he had an addiction. And it was a really sad thing. And I'm not advocating, again, I'll go back and say, I never even drank a beer. So I would not have even gone to the next step of, doing any type of substance. Right. So,
I don't have a problem with I don't have a problem with a Christian record company letting go of an artist that's on their roster if they found out after the fact, oh, this guy's doing drugs. Because
well, the fact they knew it, though, they knew it for a long time, and they let it go for a long time.
That's a different story then.
Instead of helping him,
Yeah.
and
Once it got
they
out,
coddled him for, yeah. So then
see,
they decided to do that. Yeah, it
not
was
good. You can't do that.
Yeah, not it. It's not a good look. It's not a good scene. Instead of kicking him off, maybe it wasn't even that regards. I think it was all in. I can't even speak for the situation, but you know, it's just an interesting thing of how what we do as believers to one another, and then what it does to the people that are watching this. Then they get to pick their sides, and they get to be able to have a say in this fight, just like I gave my opinion there, right? But other people come in, and then they want to be able to say, oh, this guy, blah 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 blah, and start throwing him under the rug. And I'm saying that's the worst thing that we could start to do at that, removing them from the situation, having, letting churches, not book them for shows, not falsely put them in front of youth groups. Hey, those are probably all really good ideas. But how we love one another in there, and that's what we can, I know we talk about that all the time. Maybe that's something we'll eventually get into in this episode too. But how we walk with people that disagree with us, that don't see eye to eye. I mean, me and you, we don't see 100% on every single aspect and topic of every single thing. I mean, if you did, you'd be a flat earther, right? So, but we know that's not the case, right?
That is not the case. No.
Yeah, I mean, his website, come on, guys, it's Blue Planet Media. I mean,
Planet
it's
Blue
got great
Media.
content. What is it?
Planet Blue Media. What does that have to do with flat Earth?
Yeah. Well, remember, in flat Earth, we don't believe that the Earth is a planet. We believe it's a plane. So you would just have to take one letter out, and it would say Plain Blue Media. So, so there you go. So you're learning. You're learning. See, Allan's here. He's walking. He's holding our hand through this process, and I'm teaching him about, what biblical cosmologists actually believe. So I appreciate that, right? So I mean, that's the kind of guy Allan is. I mean, I sit up and we chat about pretty much anything and have a blast. So that's what we're doing. That's the point of this secret show, guys. So if you're finding out, this for the first time, go back, watch that episode with Dirt. I brought out something I'll bring out. I didn't bring out what I brought in that one. I'll promise you guys I'll bring it out in this episode. He wanted to see me with what I look like with hair. So I do have a picture, so I'll go and grab that. He ended up seeing it afterwards, but nobody saw it live. So I will do that for you guys so you know what I look like with hair. It's actually quite funny. So yeah, let's move on because now we're getting way off base. So what's been going on in your world?
Man, well, I wrote my new book. This Thing is Spiritual. So I had to wrap that up. It's up to printers. I should be getting it back next week, and then we'll be able to start shipping them out.
Well, so what's the premise of that book?
Can I read you? I'll just read you what the premise is. I have it written down right here.
Yeah.
Right. It's a lot easier if I read it to you because I spend time writing it, so I might as well read it.
Yeah.
So
do it in a nice smooth voice, though.
Oh, I don't know if I'm about. I have a face for radio. So this thing is this thing is spiritual. Looks at the spirituality of music, the arts in general, and the respective responsibilities of both worshiper and artisan based on that scriptural premise. It explores how art evokes the demonstrative gifts of the Holy Spirit and the roles that spirituality, the supernatural, and art play in modern Christianity. God's presence and habitation in those creative and interactive expressions is examined from the scriptural foundation that inspired Jesus' declaration of, "The time is coming, indeed it's here now, when the true worshipers will worship the Father spiritually and truly, for these are the kind of people the Father wants worshiping him. God is spirit, and worshipers must worship him spiritually and truly." Our responsibility as believers, as worshipers, is to position ourselves and our lives so that we can enter into this realm of the supernatural. As artisans, we are to position ourselves and our lifestyles so as to enable his people to enter into this spiritual and supernatural realm of God's presence. For both worshiper and artisan, functioning as priests is our reasonable service because this thing is spiritual.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, baby.
I know we were talking before. Maybe this is a great time to go right into it. One of the aspects that you talk about in there in worshiping in spirit and truth have to deal around your first book, which is his feast. So yeah, maybe explain a little bit about how the feast fit into truly worshiping in spirit and truth, what he's actually calling us to do.
Well, when you take this verse from John 4, when Jesus is talking to the Samaritan woman about what is true worship and that God expects us to worship him in spirit and truth, we have to look at the Old Testament foundation of what Jesus is talking about. And when we do that, that'll actually take us to Exodus 34. So when you start looking, you've got the 10 Commandments where it tells us that we can only worship God, because the other part is the temptation in the wilderness, and Lucifer comes and tells them, hey, he takes them to the top of the temple, shows them the world, all the kingdoms of the earth, and says, these are yours. They're mine to give to you. I'll give them to you. Just worship me. And Jesus quotes Deuteronomy and says, no, you can only worship God. So based on that foundation, we have to go back to the Old Testament narrative on where Jesus got this information that he's quoting to Lucifer regarding worshiping and only worshiping God. And so so that takes us back to the 10 Commandments and what it states there about worship. Here, I'm trying to find the actual quote. So when Jesus says, he says to Lucifer, "Be gone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve." He's quoting Deuteronomy 6:13. So if we go there and then we look at where else it says that, we see the following instruction in the 10 Commandments about who to worship. and only worshiping God. So that's in Exodus 23 and 4. And then the next time you see it, because when he does, he actually the verse that Jesus uses, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. It comes from another fraction of a verse in Exodus 34, and that's after it says, it's in quotes, it's in parentheses, for you shall worship no other God, for the Lord whose name is jealous is a jealous God. That verse in Exodus 34:14. So you have him telling him this. He's quoting Deuteronomy. The premise of Jesus' quote is going to be found in the Ten Commandments, and then we're going to find it in Exodus. So if we go to actual Exodus 34 and break it down, okay, because then the question, it begs the question then, what is the scriptural definition of true worship? Well, based on what Jesus said, it points to obviously the Torah, Deuteronomy, and in Exodus. So if we look at Exodus 34, we start with God making a covenant with us. He promises dramatic displays of power to back that covenant up, which I touch on later on in the book regarding the Gospels and the ministry, the earthly ministry of Jesus, because that's what he did. And then he begins, right? Then God begins with warnings against what I call the how nots in regards to the true worship of him. So there's a list of about 5 how nots, and it's all about paganism. And then he goes into the how to's. And the how to section is very interesting because contextually and continuing where we leave off from the how nots, we see the how to's of worshiping in truth in Exodus 34, starting in verse 18. And it says, you shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, as I commanded you at the time appointed in the month of Abib, for in the month of Abib you came out from Egypt. And then he basically, after listing how not to worship him, because if you do this and it's all pagan, those are the how nots, and then this is how you do worship me, and it starts with the feasts. So that's always an exciting thing. And then he breaks down the 3 pilgrimage feasts, which basically covers all 7 of them for the most part.
Yeah. Well, I think the really cool part is, on our Take on the World Instagram page, how I view unleavened bread, just like the title of your book, this thing is spiritual. And we know that the law, the Torah, is spiritual, which means that these feasts are completely spiritual. Not only are they the most vital aspects, they represent the most vital aspects of our faith in the death, burial, and the resurrection, but in the celebration of specifically unleavened bread, how I view this thing spiritually, it's like those revival services that we have at churches, right? All week you go to these services, and the preacher's up there preaching, but his goal is to get you to continue to self-reflect on yourself, right? And so when you look at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, I had this thought all week is, am I keeping the Feast of Unleavened Bread how he wants me to? Because we get wrapped up in the physical aspect of unleavened bread, which is the purging of leaven from our pantries, our kitchen, our diets, making sure that's perfect. But the real spiritual goal of unleavened bread is, are we purging that sin from our life? Are we self-reflecting every single day? It's like these revival services, right? But yet this is the revival service that Yahweh has set up for us every year to start off. It's why these are in the spring, in that new year, why you want to start off purging these sins, these things that are holding you back from truly following him and receiving the blessings that he has for us, and being a vessel for him, right? There are these things that are holding us back. And so, I wrote in there, are we keeping unleavened bread just because we follow, the dues? But are we, the physical dues? But are we, the spiritual dues the things that he's trying to get us to do, of just, focus on what we have going on in our lives and removing those sin, that is how we can tell we kept, the feast of unleavened bread. Because the Pharisees, the Sadducees, we've got Jews doing this today. Are they doing it right, or is it just based on traditions of their fathers, and they continue to do these things without that self-reflection? And then it gets to the end, and yet it becomes a big party, and they can eat all the leaven again. Well, did it transform you? Did it change you? We shouldn't want to be running back to that leaven. Which is sin. We should be learning these things, right? So, that's kind of the thought I had all week, of, and I'm preaching to myself and to everybody. I think it's a great aspect that, I see so many posts, and I'm rambling a little bit, but I see so many posts that everybody's so focused on, oh, I accidentally ate a piece of bread, or oh, I didn't know they had it in there, and they're beating themselves up for it. Are they beating themselves up for that? And we lost Allan. Or are we, here he comes right back. So are we beating ourselves up, because we ate a piece of bread, and not beating ourselves up because we still have secret sin in our lives and we're not focused on that, or things that we know we need to get rid of? If we have anger issues, if we have, all these different sins in our lives, are we beating ourselves up over those? And that's what he really is desiring of us, just like the circumcised heart. And I believe there's an aspect of this whole time why you must be circumcised, because it represents that circumcision of that heart. Do we have that changed heart? Is our heart still being, circumcised, during these times? Are we open to that? And so I see some layers there. Maybe you can shed some insight, and I'll stop rambling.
Oh, no, you're not rambling. It's definitely true. I mean, I forgot what verse it is, but in the Old Testament, God says, you know what? I don't want your sacrifices of bulls and goats. I want a sacrifice of thanksgiving. Because it's and in the Feast Unlocked book, I actually quote a verse where it wasn't about animal sacrifices. It wasn't about any of these things. It had nothing to do with doing any of these things. Yeah, there's an actual verse about it. It's always been about our heart. It's always been about the intentions of our heart, our attitude, our hearts, our essence. Not what we do with this thing, this body, but what's actually happening internally. Because I mean, that's where he's playing the game. That's where the game is played. The game is played in the spiritual realm. And it's when I came back to the US after I got saved abroad. When I came back to the US, I had no reference experience when it came to American Christianity. I didn't know that Christians didn't believe in the Holy Spirit as far as charismatica, speaking in tongues, prophecy, healing, demonstrative gifts of the Holy Spirit. I didn't know that the majority of the United States the majority of Christianity in the United States didn't subscribe to that. So there was this like crazy learning curve of dealing with that, because I came from a very demonstrative Holy Spirit thing. Prophecy was commonplace. All the aspects of speaking in tongues, whether it's in song or in whatever, that was a daily thing. I mean, seeing supernatural healings, all that stuff, all that supernatural spirit stuff, that was common. That was every day. That was my normal. And then I show up here and no one believes in that stuff. A huge majority didn't believe in that. And so there was this, I don't understand, and that was 1983. It's 2019. I still don't understand how people are going to do this successfully or fruitfully or correctly without that piece, because everything about our faith is spiritual. It's all played out in the spiritual realm. So if we're not walking in that spiritual realm, if we're not functioning in that spiritual realm, then everything we're doing has a, I'll use the word carnal, but what I mean is has a fleshly, earthly aspect to it. I mean, how we process everything is going to be in the flesh. How we come to our conclusions are going to be in the flesh, in the carnal or in the physical realm. How we determine how we go about what we're doing and stuff like that. You know, if we're
Well, the
not
one thing,
living, if we're not living or functioning in that spiritual realm, then we're in the physical realm.
yeah. Well, one thing I want to say right there, right when we're still talking about the physical, just so you're listening to this, those physical things of, unleavened bread and, of the commandments, for example, they're vital to teach us the spiritual lesson. So I'm not saying that we get rid of those or anything of that nature.
Neither am I. And I don't hear you saying that. And I'm not
No,
saying
and
that
I
either.
just wanted to clarify that. Yeah,
Right.
I just wanted to clarify that to the listener, because there's a lot of people who, but the emphasis and the focus is the spiritual aspect. So if the physical things aren't teaching you the spiritual realm,
Then you're missing
then you
out
should
on
go
something.
back. You're missing out, and you
Yeah.
should go back and keep looking and
Right.
keep looking. It's just like wearing zeet.
Right.
If you're wearing zeet to be part of a club, to just say, well, I'm just obeying God, so I'm going to wear them. You're missing the point of them. That there's a spiritual lesson, which is to teach you to walk in His commandments. They're a spiritual guide for you in the physical form.
Right.
So
Well,
use them for that, because they teach you that.
Well, everything that Israel went through in the desert, every physical thing they were supposed to do was addressing and speaking to their spiritual state. Whether it was gathering manna twice on Friday and none on the Sabbath. The basic element of obedience, and they blew it immediately.
Right.
The wearing tassels, every aspect that they were learning in the desert Torah, every aspect of it was a physical thing that represented what was happening in their spiritual. Right? We're eating differently. We're wearing what we're wearing differently than the pagan peoples around us. We're doing all these things based on God's instruction, and it's supposed to be speaking to our spiritual. So what happens is when you're doing all this physical stuff and you don't have that spiritual connection, it's legalism. Like you said, in Romans, Paul says the Torah is spiritual. Well, what about all those people that don't believe that the spiritual gifts or the manifestation of the Holy Spirit gifts are for today? Speaking in tongues, prophecy, healing, raising the dead, casting out demons. That's a whole bunch of that's the majority of the Torah community, in my experience. Well, if you're not buying into that, how are you understanding what Paul is saying? Because Paul is the guy that's telling us in the Bible to desire and to seek and go after the greater gifts, prophecy, speaking in tongues. Okay, so there's this massive disconnect. If Paul's telling us in Corinthians to earnestly desire the spiritual gifts and the higher gifts, and he lays them out, prophecy and speaking in tongues. If we don't agree with that, or if we don't believe that as a necessary part of our spiritual cosmology, then we're not going to understand. Did you like the way I did that? Then we're not going to understand.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
We're not going to understand what Paul is saying then in Romans when he says the Torah is spiritual, because that's what he's talking about, the spiritual realm. So,
and,
we do all this Torah stuff without that spiritual realm understanding. It's legalism. That's where the Pharisees. That's what their problem was.
Yeah, and that's why when Jesus said listen to everything they say, but don't do as they do, right? Because they were teaching from from the Torah. So listen to that,
but
they don't even do it, because they don't even keep the law. because that's spiritual. It's the intention. It's the reason you do what you do. I always give this analogy when it comes to understanding the aspects of the law. When we're talking about the physical versus the spiritual realm, it's very simple, very basic, right? But if you could take a video of one guy giving a widow $100, just a video, no audio, no sound, and you took another guy's video of them doing the same exact thing. And the Torah tells us to take care of the poor, the widows, it tells us to take care of them. So that's a command, right? We're supposed to do this. This is an option. This is what our hearts, if he's in us, we should have a heart to help the needy. That is, what the scriptures teach us, and we don't even need that because it's already in us. If we are believers, we're naturally should have that. That should be a natural thing. I believe is just loving one another. It's just such an easy thing when you're a believer. Because he puts his law on your hearts and on your mind, and I think that's an easy one right there, right? But if you go back to the video of people doing that, and they gave $100 each, and we both watched the video of both people doing it, we would say, well, they both gave $100, and they obeyed the commandment, right? But in reality, is one of those guys gave to that woman because he loved her and wanted the best for her and wanted to take care of her. The other person was going to make sure that everybody's going to know about it. It was for physical show. And yet they did the same physical action, but their intentions were completely off, completely different from each other. One was keeping the law. One was a mockery of the law. And the father says, I'm happy. I'm pleased with what you've done. The other is it's an abomination. And yet right there we have two physical actions being the exact same, but the intentions of the heart being totally different. And I think that's the checking point in every action that we do. Is it because of love? Is it because of obedience? I could say if you're doing anything of the law and it's not for love and obedience, it's not what he's asked us to do. You're not obeying it. It is the furthest thing from him. It is Sadducees, it's Pharisees. It's exactly what they did, and he hated that. And they all, and that's what Paul came to condemn. That's what Christ condemned in his ministry. And so, we have to check. I mean, this is not like I'm preaching to everybody. No, I'm preaching myself. This is something that we have to guard every single day. Why do we do what we do? If we do it because of love and obedience, and we show that fruit of love and obedience, then let's keep doing that. But check ourselves. If we're doing it for other reasons, then it's all for nothing, and it's all actually damaging. And yet we see that, from Facebook comments to, just attitudes out there. It's just really, really hard, in this day and age of social media and the comments that are going to be left here. But you know what? Hey, that's kind of the realm, of what we want to portray at Take on the World. We want to teach that. We want to represent that. We're going to fail at that, but we want to get right back up on the horse and continue to try again to always make sure our intentions in what we're doing is because of love and obedience, and always guarding our hearts in that. And that's, I can't say that enough.
Yeah, it's, I don't think there's a lot of teaching or discipling regarding this. And because there isn't, everyone's just running around doing what's right in their own eyes. And I mean, I address this in the book because it's obvious that it's not happening, but none of this that, Jesus modeled discipleship. He modeled what he expected his disciples, right? The rabbi principle. He modeled what he expected his disciples to do. He talked to them about it. He showed them how it was done. He walked them through it. It's discipleship. And based on the epistles, we know that the disciples did the same thing to their disciples. They modeled it, they walked through it, they walked together, they explained it. It's the word impart. It was imparted.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of that happening. People are not, there's people, well, people aren't, here's what it is. People are not putting themselves in the position for someone to model this for them, let alone impart or teach, instruct, and walk through this with them. There's something going on in the Torah community that I think is very, 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 very dangerous, and that's the lack of human interaction called fellowship. This thing was never designed to be done alone in seclusion via the internet. It just wasn't. And you can't, and the fact that they're using Torah as an excuse for not being in fellowship in a Christian church, that's going to backfire on you. I guarantee you that's going to backfire on you. You know, if you're, because see, here's the thing. Here's the mentality that's out there. I'm smarter than the Christians because I'm doing Torah and they haven't figured that out yet. Well, if you're so smart, why can't you go fellowship with a bunch of Christians and know what information to disregard when it's coming from the pulpit? You still need to be in fellowship. You still have to be in fellowship.
Well, that's where that's where home groups or other fellowships, they're going to be great. If here's the thing. We're on the secret show, so we kind of get to say whatever we kind of want to say here, but
we can.
No, to a degree. I know sometimes that if I let you no, just kidding.
Hey, I'm on my best behavior. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead. I got I have a funny anecdote about that, but go ahead.
Well, here's the one thing that I want to share is, when it comes to evangelical brothers and sisters in our faith. See, here's the problem is that we get so wrapped up in our new doctrines and our new ideas and our new ways how we should act towards all that, whether it's pagan holidays and this and that, all these things, right? And it causes us to act in a manner that isn't the greatest of these commandments. It isn't loving one another, right? So, I'm going to say this in regards to Sunday worship, right? If you're in a Sunday fellowship and you have not heard from the Father, you need to leave. I'm going to tell you, that's who you should be praying to and asking advice to, not online. You need to pray, and if he says no, stand still. You're here for a reason.
I agree.
And then he says if you need to leave, right? So here's the problem: is so many people think you come to this understanding, and you have to leave. If you don't leave Babylon, if you don't do this, because you got to check all these points that somebody else came up with. But see, there's no wiggle room for what the Father said. Hey, I want you to stay. I've talked to so many people who say, Father hasn't told me to leave, and I'm making headways. One testimony I can share from the conference is there's a couple who came to we met them at another conference, and a couple years earlier, 2 years earlier, and they were in Sunday worship, and they were talking this stuff out with their pastor at a big church. And 2 years later, they're still there. The pastor has come to the understanding of feast days, Sabbaths, and through their fellowship together, they've walked with them hand in hand. And see, those stories would not be there. Here's the problem. We want people to come to our understanding of everything in our time. But we didn't We didn't come to it in our time before. It was something that he revealed to us. So if he revealed to you that you need to stop doing Christmas, or you need to stop doing Easter, and you need to start keeping the feast, and you need to start remembering, the most vital parts of your faith through his death, burial, and resurrection, through the thing he created in creation. Crazy thought, maybe that just is the correct thing to do. If he, shared that with you and he revealed that truth to you, it was on his time. We can't change anybody. Only he can change them. Only the Holy Spirit is going to lead them through that, into that truth. And so we have to be able to allow him to do his job. We need to be encouraging. We need to love one another. We need to walk with one another, and I take it back maybe to that story of the person, with the substance abuse. I think it'd be easier for anybody in Torah to walk with somebody who has substance abuse, it would be harder for somebody in Torah to walk with somebody if they're having a hard time giving up Christmas, or Sunday worship, right? It's harder for Jude. No, we can't talk to you until you leave Babylon. But you're smoking pot. Well, come over here. We're going to walk with you. You're heavily addicted to cocaine. Let me work with you. You're an adulterer, or you're a pornographer. Let me work with you, right? And I see, that being more easier to work with than people that are stuck in, they still celebrate Christmas and they don't understand everything fully yet. Let's have some peace, patience, mercy, grace for these people, because he gave it all to us when we didn't have any of these understandings.
I absolutely 1000% agree with you. Here's the problem, though. The person that's determining whether God's telling them to leave or stay, most of those people don't have discernment. And so they're making their choices, good, bad, or indifferent, based on feelings, based on, they don't have discernment. And I say that because when you talk to these people, and I do, and I have, they don't believe in the manifestation of the Holy Spirit as in the Bible for today. Well, discernment is one of them. And you have to have discernment to know whether God's telling you to stay or leave. So it's this, remember, what was it? Baseball? What was it? A golf ball that those rubber, it was full of rubber bands when you would break them open or cut them open. It's like this. It's a Pandora's box, dude. It is. There is so multifaceted what we're talking about, how to do this thing. But we have the instruction. We have New Testament instruction on how to do this thing. And that's all I'm suggesting. And fellowship is absolutely imperative. They did not pull this off because they were out of fellowship. The whole Acts narrative is because they were in fellowship. And then so someone's going to say, yeah, but they were of like mind and of like spirit. That's true. But there are examples in the New Testament where people were doing this thing wrong. The Judaizers, on and on and on, right? That didn't shut down the whole thing. That they didn't shut everything down because there was bad examples around them, right?
And newsflash, we're all probably doing something wrong.
Absolutely.
And so we can't, and that's the thing we can't forget, is we're all doing something not correct. And we have to be so humble to be open to his truth constantly. I don't know why that's such a hard thing for us to do. We all want to be right about everything, but yet, we have to be humble. We have to, allow him to continue to reveal truth for us. A great example, I mentioned it in one of the last shows, is Doug Krieger. He was teaching pre-trib rapture for probably almost 30 years. And yet this was how he made his living for his ministry. Well, no, he was a principal, but this was, he did his ministry, was led on this principle, on this doctrine. But because he was open to allowing the scripture to reveal truth to him and the Holy Spirit guide him to truth, he was able to leave that doctrine and completely, change from that doctrine to something else after 30 years of indoctrination, right? That's a lot of humbling, When you're out doing huge conferences and yet everything you spoke about, you have to recant and change your theology stance. Are we open to that? Are we open to, hey, we have some understanding. We understand Paul much more clear than we ever did, but now are we going to put that intention, the action, the love, back into what we're doing? And I think, because we have so much more knowledge of scripture, of the truth, of his commandments, we have to go back to focusing like he did when Yeshua said, Master, what are the two greatest of these of the law? Love your God, love your neighbor as yourself, right? And yet we somehow will skip over those and we focus on everything else that's new to us. And I want to say this before you, and maybe you can enlighten me on this, but when we say Torah, so many people are so confused by what we mean by Torah. And I'm going to just be flat out honest with you. The new people, they hear Torah and they go, are you talking about the first 5 books of the Bible? Are you talking about the law of Moses? Well, here's the reality of the whole crutch. People in Torah observance, if we're called, people that claim Torah observant, which is kind of crazy because nobody's Torah observant or Torah. We could be Torah pursuant, but
I call them Torah enlightened.
Right. Well, here's the thing, is there was an interview done by Skywatch TV, and they had a guest on there, Timothy Alberino, and he called people that are in this movement reductionist. Now he the way that he meant it was completely off base, but what he said rang so much truth in the term reductionist. Because what a lot of people here's what we're actually saying. So if you see those little memes and it says what I say and what I do and what people think, what my mom thinks I do, what I do in reality, right? Okay, here's what we're saying. When we're talking about Torah, all we mean, okay, this is what, and I'm talking about the community. This is the crux. This is part of the problem. All we mean is, do you keep the Sabbath? Do you keep the feast? Do you wear tzitzits? And what is your thoughts of circumcision? And do you eat biblically clean, of course? That's what we're talking about. Yet we have just reduced all of Yahweh's instructions to these handful of things.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. So when we say, oh, they're not Torah observant, no, that you just meant they don't follow 5 things.
Right.
That's what that is. I'm going to say it. It's a mockery to his law, to his Torah, to his truth. And we've just reduced it. We just became reductionist. We can't do that. We have to, it's the whole thing. If we call ourselves whole Bible believers, we have to believe the whole word and teach that and don't mean that. So
they're doing everything. Here's okay. I know that the NYS TV audience, the Take on the World audience, I know they don't know me very well. So I've been teaching Christianity versus the Bible to Christians since the 80s. I've been having this convoluted conversation with Christians for 30 plus years, right? And then you bring in the Torah, Anyway, the convoluted conversation I've had with Christians for 30 plus years, I now have with the Torah community, because it's the same convoluted conversation, regarding Christians. They don't like Christians. They're anti-Christian. They hate Christians. It's bizarre. It's incredibly dangerous. So about 3 or 4 years ago, a dear friend of mine, Christian man, love this man to pieces, dear brother. We were talking. He knows what I'm all about. And he just flat out asked. We're sitting on my daughter. I was visiting in Dallas. We were sitting on my daughter's porch. And he goes, so what is it exactly that you're doing that I'm not doing? And I'm like, wow, no one has asked me that before. It's a great question. I don't understand why. I don't know why I haven't figured that out, why I never went there, or why I haven't heard it before. And so I sat there and I basically, like you said, 5 things. I named it out, Leviticus 23, which is going to encompass the Sabbath, counting of the Omer, the 7 feasts, and the new moon. I keep Leviticus 23. You don't. I eat biblically. I wear tassels. And that was it. Because he's faithful to his wife. He doesn't lie. He doesn't cheat. He doesn't kill. He doesn't blaspheme the Lord. He doesn't use the Lord's name in vain. He keeps all the commandments except for the 4th
Mm-hmm.
one, right? So, I mean, he's keeping Torah. He's just not doing these 3. I put them all in 3. Leviticus 23, diet, tassels. There's nothing more than that, right?
Well, adult circumcision.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't agree with adult circumcision. I don't teach adult circumcision.
Yeah.
You do?
We won't go there. No, we won't go there.
Oh, we won't go there?
That was a joke. Let's not go there.
I won't drink a beer, but come here, buddy.
Yeah, no.
I won't drink a beer, but I got something.
I'm right. I'm right there with you. No, obviously it's a choice. Anybody can make it.
I do teach that if you have a male son, have him circumcised by the 8th day.
Absolutely.
Keep the covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So here, you and I agree on everything but that earth thing, because we've had these conversations off air.
We just haven't gotten. I will tell this, since we're on the secret show. Here's the thing. When I speak to Allan, okay, so if you're a flat earther, you're watching this show, I don't need to flat smack Allan, okay? Allan's not there. He's not ready for it. If he asks me a question, I'm going to answer his question. I'm going to share that with him. And that's our relationship. We don't have to be eye to eye on that. We don't need to be eye to eye on, how all spiritual gifts work and operate and this, that, and the other, right? I don't have to be right there with him. We can walk and pray for one another and spend time with one another, talk to one another. We all don't have to be on the same aspect or the page on every single detail of every single thing, because guess what? If that was our criteria, well, we would have very few friends and few people that that can work with. And remember, the big thing is, iron sharpens iron. That means one sharp piece of iron might need another sharp piece of iron to learn something that we didn't know, and they made because of love, of brotherly love, that that Philadelphia love, allows us to be able to then, hear from them and listen to them. So if Allan, if I seriously said, Allan, I'd like to share something with you about biblical cosmology, why it's important, you would say, sure, I would like to hear that. I wouldn't do that because it might make you a little uncomfortable. Hey, on the secret show, I forgot to tell you, we do some hot seat questions, but I won't make them flat Earth related. So, but
you can make them next time related, man.
Yeah, so next time I'll do that. But
you can make them anything related. I can handle it.
I know you can.
I wasn't scattered for you.
Yes, and so but it comes back to loving one another and how we treat one another, and it's crazy. I mean, I've seen people, lose friendships over the smallest debates, whether we believe, like for example, Rob Skiba gets kicked out of all the conferences because of his very well thought out thesis on of that there is no second incursion of angels. We're talking about something so completely irrelevant to our to the death, burial, resurrection, to salvation. It's a very fascinating aspect. There's a lot of interesting things there. I happen to agree with Rob, in his stance in that. But for it to break off lifelong relationships, never be able to come back to a conference because we're talking about the angels didn't fall again from heaven? I mean, really, that's what we're going to, we're going to fight that. And then you're not going to come. And then eventually you're going to have to start to seek out every single thing that this guy says is wrong. And then you have to hate on this guy continually when you're going, the greatest of the commandments, love your neighbor as yourself, right? And we can't do it. We just can't do it. There's just something about, believers. And here's the thing, that's going to rub a lot of people wrong. See, when people come to understanding the Torah more, it's like they just switched faiths. Yet, if you don't look at understanding the commandments and coming to his truth of keeping the commandments of love through love and obedience as spiritual maturity in your already well-rooted faith, or maybe it wasn't really well-rooted and it became more rooted in faith when you understand your identity and the grafting in and all these things. If you don't view these as spiritual maturity, and you view them as a new faith, then you start treating them, like everybody's a Mormon or everybody's a Jehovah's Witness, and you're starting to say, you believe, Satan is Jesus' brother, that, I mean, and you start doing these types of debates over, dietary instructions and all these things, and instead of people actually hearing us and listening to us, I mean, we teach biblical health. I mean, for crying out loud, I can spend, I've done this over the past 10 years, teach people to not eat unclean foods. And I can tell them on the phone, coaching them through health, and tell them, here are the foods you need to stay away from, all your toxic foods. And then I start to list them out and I explain why they're toxic. And guess what they say? I never knew that. I'm going to do that right now. Bacon, all my shellfish, all that's going in the garbage. I hear you. Okay, then we're going to get rid of GMOs. We're going to get rid of all these other things. They don't have a problem with it. It's when we start to cram down their throats what they need to do, and then I always throw in at the end, I think the Creator knew what he meant when he said this is clean and this is unclean, and they end up saying this at the end of the conversation 99% of the time. I never knew that. Wow. And most of the people I talk to happen to be of some sort of biblical faith. And I've talked to pastors, I've talked to so many people. I'm able to lead with that because they're looking for help in that regards, in that area. And then eventually, maybe their theology of Paul's not going to change right off the bat, but they're going to know, here, these foods we need to get rid of. I mean, Joel Osteen, for crying out loud, has terrible theology, but he tells you, don't eat unclean animals. He's got something right, and he's got a lot of things wrong, but, he does teach that right. But it's how we lead. And another quick story on that is a gal on Facebook. She posted 20 things that you didn't know about me. And she wrote in there, one of the questions was, what's your favorite holiday and what's your favorite meal? And she wrote in there, Passover. This gal's just a standard evangelical Christian, and coming to the truth of Passover, and she wrote Seder as the meal she likes to cook. Every single Christian, hundreds of comments, people were asking her, I thought Passover was for the Jews. Why do you keep it? And then she starts to explain and how it's all about Jesus, and not one negative comment, not one. People were asking, well, how do I learn to do this with my family? It sounds amazing. Here's the difference. It wasn't leave Easter, leave all the pagan traditions, and come and do Passover. Right. It was done in love, and it was shown in love, and it was received in love. Are we doing that? If we're going to share these truths with everybody, are we leading with that love? Because that right there, that changed me.
Yeah. Well, that changed
me right away.
You have to ask yourself. You have to ask yourself, why is the majority of the Torah community like that? Why are they what I call Torah thumpers or Torah Nazis, whatever word you want to use? You know what I'm talking about. All of you know what I'm talking about. Why are they like that? I think I know why.
Why?
One, this thing isn't spiritual for them. It's a religious thing. Because that's how the religious act. Step back and separate ourselves from the community. We would look at anybody and say the same thing. Oh, those guys, they're really into their religion. It's not like this other thing for them. It's a religious thing for them, right? That would be one. But and where does that come from? Well, they were probably nominal Christians to begin with when they were outside of Torah, and all they've done is bring that baggage and into this. They were probably like that when they were Christians, and now they're doing it with Torah because it's not the Spirit of God, because the Spirit of God doesn't do that. It's not God, because God doesn't do that. It's completely agenda-driven flesh.
And everybody watching, we're just giving some opinions, and we're just having we're
Oh
having
no,
what I call.
This isn't my opinion. This is absolutely see
Yeah.
the root of what I see.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, and I'm going to give you my opinion on that real quick. Is another aspect that I see, and because of so many people that are coming to the revelation of His commandments, and I'm one of them. Okay, who have come to this through through the internet. Okay, through what I'm gonna term is the truth movement. Okay, and for most people, the truth movement started with understanding 9/11 was a hoax. Okay, and then it moves on.
Wait a second. What? I'm just kidding.
and then it stemmed to the next thing, and then it stemmed to the next thing, and then you start to learn the lies of the Bible, and whoa, Yeshua is his Hebrew name. I didn't know that. Oh, Christmas is pagan, Easter is pagan. Then it leads you to the way that I thought of Paul my whole life, that is actually doesn't line up to what Scripture says, and now we have to put Paul versus Jesus, and what a mess that creates, right? And then you have to put the Father versus the Father, or Jesus versus the Father. And you're like, this is crazy, right? But here's the problem: is I think because a lot of people, especially through the internet, we come to these realizations and these truths. And I'm not knocking anybody for coming that way, because you can come to the revelation of His cosmology. You can come to the revelation of who controls this world, who's pulling the strings behind there. So there's validity to secrets, learning about secret societies, because it transforms how you view this world, right? From the vaccines to you name it, all these things that you come to. But here's how we defend it. We don't defend, now that we come to biblical revelations, that we're supposed to be leading with love, and supposed to be sharing with love, and sharing with with that truth and that spirit. We respond the same way when we're going to talk to somebody, when they're going to start talking about 9/11, and then we're going to respond, there's no way that jet fuel can melt steel beams. And we're going to fight that. And yet we're going to do that same attitude, how we defend, when we talk about 9/11 and we talk about Building 7 being a complete hoax, because two planes, 3 buildings, okay, right? Do the math, doesn't add up. We're going to defend it with passion, with vigor, and it's not leading with love. See, that's the difference. Now we're talking about things that are biblical, that are spiritual, that are heavenly, that are of our Father. We respond the same way, and I'm seeing a lot of that because it's the same fight. It's the same, the same race. When in reality, we shouldn't be responding in either of those measures in there.
Right.
And I've been guilty of that. I'll admit, debating is fun. It gets you all hyped up. it's fun to do, but then when you're in the middle of it, I'm sure you felt this way too. Your heart kind of races, and you're all jacked up. And if you do it too late at night, you're not going to sleep for a while. These are signs that, are we doing them for the right reasons?
Right.
And I'm sure everybody out there has probably been in that position. Whatever topic it is, telling Allan, if you don't come to the realization that the Earth is geocentric and it's in the center, right? And Allan's over there going, no, you guys have no clue. NASA, right? I mean,
So here's the thing. Here's the thing. For a Torah observant believer, whatever word you want to use, to have such a vile discontempt towards Christians that don't understand Torah is the equivalent of me getting saved, or you getting saved, or that individual getting saved, and then having this vile contempt for the sinner because they haven't figured out Jesus. Only one character in the narrative did that, and that was the Pharisees. You stop it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we
Well,
have
that's what the law does.
we have to. Here's you want to know what God's will is for your life? I'll tell you right now what God's will is. For everyone that's going to end up watching this or watching this right now, this is God's will for your life, and that's to love people into a right relationship with Jesus. See, we're so busy as well. I'm not, but as Torah, as the Torah community, as a Torah community, they're so busy trying to convert people to Torah. What is that all about? Torah didn't die for you. Torah didn't rise from the grave for you. Torah can't do nothing for you. They're evangelizing Torah. They're not evangelizing Jesus. Evangelism isn't even that's not even on their radar.
Right.
We have
it's putting that cart before the horse.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And that,
that's what makes it legalistic, and that's what makes it difficult for them to love those other people. They're wrapped up with the legalism of the religious position and Gnosticism, that secret knowledge spirit. It's demonic. If you're not able to love your Sunday morning Christian brethren, or you know what? This is what I'm seeing on Facebook, and it's absolutely demonically disturbing, is the vileness they have towards their Christian blood family. Wow. You know what my Bible says? My Bible says if I'm a believer and my spouse isn't a believer, I'm supposed to serve them because I sanctify them. And if I'm a Torah observant believer, which I am, and I have Christian family that don't know Torah, I better be better in loving them and showing them Jesus. And that's not going on. I'm hearing the people are counseling people to leave their non-Torah observant Christian spouses. This is insanity. There's a reason why I stayed away from the Torah community for 12 plus years. This is the reason.
I'll say this.
So
here's the realm of the law. Is that we know that through love and obedience, by keeping it through love and obedience, it leads us to these blessings. It leads us to life. But here's the crutch of it, and we know throughout history this has been the problem. Then it becomes just like what the Pharisees and the Sadducees would do with the law. They had the same law. Then they added their Talmudic traditions. I come from independent fundamentalist Baptist. So they had their own Talmud, which was men can't have long hair. So, but men can't shave their hair at the same time. So you have to have your hair parted down on the right side, whatever side that is. You have to have it parted on the right side. You have to always wear suits to church. You can't have your hair touch the back of the collar if women can't wear pants. So it's their own made up traditions, right? And
Yeah.
so when it just comes to that, we're just going to start doing the same things over and over and over. It's a never ending cycle.
But it doesn't have to. You
Yeah.
know, I've been
Well, it should be.
I've been a Christian
Yeah.
for 39 plus years, and I've been the Lord started revealing Torah to me in 1986. As a family, we've been doing Torah for about 12 years. It doesn't have to go. You don't have to become that person. Just
Yeah.
don't be that person in the first place. But if you are, repent, knock it off, stop it. You can be, I hang out with Christians. I hang out with pagans, like bona fide card carrying pagans. I hang out with the Mormons. I hang out with non-believers, Buddhists. I hang out with everybody. And when you walk in the Spirit, you know when to talk to Joe Mormon about whatever, or you know when to talk to Joe Pagan about whatever, or you know what. But you know what? But the whole time you're showing them love. You're loving them into a right relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, and what you're not saying, and some people may take it the wrong way, is ecumenicalism is a crux of a satanic realm in its sense. That everybody can be right and everybody's doctrines are okay, and we can go loving one another.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not even saying
No,
that a little bit.
right. And so, but here's the thing, we have to have those relationships for, see, relationships are very spiritual as well, right? Because these are these spiritual connections that we have towards one another. They will be able to know if we truly, genuinely love them.
I believe that God brings people into your life for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet, and we may be that opportunity for that person to hear his truth. Like if you're going to spend time with a Mormon, and I know Mormons, and if you're going to be brought into their lives, the first thing is that they have to feel a genuine. They have to know you love them,
right?
And and then that's going to open up the opportunities for you to share that truth. And I don't know what that timing looks like in everybody's case, and I think it's a case by case thing, and you just walk out his truth the whole time that you have that, and then there's a right time, and when that time comes, present it in love, present it with truth, with that. And yes, that may hurt that person. It may spark up a debate. It may spark up this. But if they know by how you present it in love, you're not going to walk away hating each other. You're going to continue that conversation. And I've been part of those, and I'm being blessed to be part of those. So that we have to still
and that's just basic Christianity 101.
Yeah. Well, but then again, you use the word Christianity. I mean, we're going to say, well, that's a pagan word, and you can't be called a Christian, you can't be called this, and yet at the very simple aspect of what a true Christian is someone who follows Christ. Somebody, I love how David Carrico puts it. David Carrico, he says and teaches the doctrine of Christ. And that's when people ask him, what do you believe, David? He says, I believe and teach the doctrines of Christ. Doctrine of Christ is keeping the Torah, right? We know that if you agape me, unconditionally love me, you will keep my commandments, right? And you can't pin Jesus versus the Father, and say that, well, Jesus's commands are different than the Father's commands. You can't do that and say that they're one connected, right? You can't do that. If they're not connected and they're all two entities over here, I've got my commandments. Nope, I've got my commandments. But yet, we're one. No. Don't take that, because somebody's going to screenshot that and say I'm Illuminati. But they will.
And then there's that going on too. Muppet.
Yeah. Uh, but you can't do that, right? So if you're out there still thinking that you can pin the Father versus the Son and yet claim they're one, you've missed the boat again. And
Yeah.
and I think there's so many people. There's a lot of prominent people out there in the community that are coming hard against Torah observance and walking in His commandments. And
I
look, I mean,
do.
come on,
Do you blame them? I mean, look at the mess these people are making out of everything.
yeah,
I come against them
you know,
too. It's ridiculous.
yeah, and
You know, I touch
it,
I
it,
touch I touch a lot. I touch on a lot of this in my new book. This thing is spiritual because it's relevant. You know, because this thing is spiritual, and you're not walking in the spirit. Knock it off. You know.
Yeah, it's how we love. And here's a response. So you know what we have made. And I'll say this: we've been maybe a little hard on that attitude in the community, and we've all been guilty of that same attitude. I don't think you would say that you've had that. I would say I've had that attitude. I'm sure you would even say you've had that attitude. Um, you know, and
Hey, Chris,
we're responding hopefully in
Chris,
love.
I've been doing this long enough to make enough mistakes for all of us. I've made enough mistakes for all of us.
Yeah,
And wisdom is learning from other people's mistakes.
yeah. I mean, what's it say? You got, if you've got some gray hair, that's a sign of wisdom. So, I think you're taking the cake right now. So, well, most people don't know Allan is he's a grandfather as well. So,
Yeah, I've got 4 grandkids, man. It's
yeah.
awesome. It's like
Hey,
way rad. I'm on round 2. I'm actually smarter this time around.
hey, did you ever
Imagine
see? Hey,
that.
not to change subject, but I was doing what can get you in trouble, which is you go YouTube hop from thing to thing, and I saw recently a old Saturday Night Live skit. It's not that old, but it made me it reminded me of you. It was
Oh,
uh, it was a punk rock wedding. It was a punk rock wedding, and there was an old. They were all old,
it was
and
like all the dads it was all the
yes,
dads at the wedding that were going to play at the reception that used to be punks like 30 years ago or something.
yes,
And Dave
yes,
Grohl is on drums.
yes.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I've watched enough of your live performance to go. I forgot who was doing the lead, but I'm like, man, he nailed his performance, and all the movements of that era. So
It's a good
I was
little
like, man,
skit.
this is totally Allan. This is totally Allan if he did this right now. So
Oh man.
I
Oh,
was like, and then
do
I
you
thought in my head, wow, if I got him to actually do this at the conference, wow, what would that look like?
no. Do you remember a band called The Crucified?
Crucified?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Fresno. Okay, so I was talking to Mark, the singer. We so we go way back like a gazillion years.
That's Mark Solomon, right?
Right. So we were talking about this was about 5 years ago, and we were talking about we both have a reunion or whatever for both bands. If I was ever to do that, it's never going to happen. If I did, I would want to go on tour with him because we did a lot of stuff. We were kind of like sister bands. But he's like, so we started talking about, here we are at the age that we're at, fronting the band, and he's like, and he says, dude, I hurt myself sleeping.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that would. So, I think we should finish addressing what we were doing before. So you know, here's the thing. I think we need, and I'll wrap up that part, and we can talk about something different. But I think that as a community, how we win is by revealing Christ, and that we are Christ-like. Whether we call that, still say, we can be called a Christian, a Torah observer, whatever label you want to put to it. If He's the Lord of your life, we need to not only walk the way and do the things that He did, like we talk about, but love how He loved. And we won't fail if we strive to do that. We're going to make mistakes. We're not going to act always correctly. Even in our own homes, and I think that's where it starts. I admit, I'm short. Dealing with a lot of stress all the time. I can be short with Liz. She can ask me a question, and I can respond in a way that's degrading, to somebody I'm supposed to, love like Christ loved the church. And I'm going, oh, I blew it. I'm sorry. I was stressed out. I should have, I just yelled the answer at you, and I'm going, why did I do that? Right. So it's like, if we're not going to be able to, learn in our households, in our family, with our kids, and that, before we start giving our opinions on Facebook and start going crazy out there, we need to, start correcting the home and correcting our marriages, our relationships with our family. I mean, I'll tell you this: if you've got parents who are believers, and they're fighting you right now because you have made some stances on the holidays and you keep the feast, you got to learn to start to love them. And then when you start to love them, I've seen so many stories that people, that parents didn't buy into what, people walk in this way, and then it caused them, to uh, you dismantled the family and nobody talks, and you're going, that's not what you're called to do, right? That you're never been, obviously I know there's some prophetic passages about, you know, mothers, turning on their kids, and brothers turning on their family and sisters, right? And there's all these passages, right? So, but I can guarantee you that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about something much different and bigger. On these little issues you know, and once we've done that, this week with a family member, that watches our son, unleavened bread, she was really respectful this time around. She changed his daily eating around that, and didn't make a fit about it, because this year we led with love. We led with, hey, this is why we do this. We explained it. We made sure she understood. And it wasn't a big fight, like it's been in the past. And we've learned from that mistake. And so that's all I'm saying is, if we start to just lead with love in these areas, we're gonna win out. We're gonna be able to, share these truths. And then that amazing moment when somebody says, hey, tell me about the feast. Well, great. I'm so happy. I'm going to hand you Allan's book, right? Or you're going to have enough knowledge that you're going to be able to walk them through the scriptures and share that with them, and show that death, burial, resurrection is our most vital parts of our faith in the spring feast, and in the blessed hope, his prophetic coming back in, the fall feast. And, and, and if we lead with Christ in those, it may be received with, those are for the Jews, and that's this. Give them time. We all went through that,
Yeah.
So
Torah observance, coming to the understanding of Torah, doesn't make us special, doesn't make us smarter, doesn't make us more important. It makes us more responsible to exemplify God's heart through the love of his son Jesus to the people around us.
that's a profound statement, and it is really true, and it should give you one thing, and it should actually put what the beginning of knowledge and wisdom is, which is the fear of the Lord. When we have, because it makes him much more real, than it was maybe in our early parts of our journey, and as we're in a deeper, more spiritually mature journey, that fear of the Lord is actually going to intensify. And if we understand the fear of the Lord, and not really fear, but as this great honor, this respect, um, it's a game changer in our walks,
Yeah.
and it's something that daily we're going to have to continue to grow on and continue to develop. Nothing's overnight. I mean, this is a journey. I view it all as you know just like that we have, they use Acts 15 to say, these are the only few things that you need to do as a new Gentile believer, right? That's what the church will tell us. But then they pass over, that you're going to learn the rest of Moses,
Right.
every Shabbat after that fact. Here's the thing. We're still we still got, it didn't give a timetable. Didn't say, well, they're going to learn this in the next 3 months, every Shabbat. No, they're gonna start their journey, and every Shabbat they're gonna come and learn and hear the Torah portion and learn these things every single week.
Yeah.
There was no timetable. We're still in our timetables, guys, and that's the thing. We're still learning and growing, and the thing is, we may get all that physical truth, but until we convert that over to the spiritual realm and walk in that spiritual truth of how we love one another, we can say we know what the commandments are, but until we actually do them, we can write them all down like we're supposed to do, but until we actually act those out and actually walk in those, and people see that in us, and that's what he's desiring for us, because ultimately we've got a job to do in the regards of the Great Commission, the discipleship. We can't be yielding bad fruit if we're going to be leading people to him and discipling people in him. We
Yeah.
have to be yielding this great fruit, and that only comes through true, genuine love and obedience. So we have to check our hearts constantly, and I think this message, of unleavened bread, is that message of what he's trying to get us to do, of check our hearts, check our intentions, and then that's how we're called to live and do everything because of love and obedience. And that's our challenge. We can have all that knowledge, but if we don't have love, like the scripture says, we have nothing.
Yeah. First John makes it. First John makes it pretty foundational about it. And don't of course I hope the watchers or the listeners don't mistake my tone or what I say or how I say it for anything other than it's just passion. I love God's people. I've served God's people for decades. I love God's people. I love his church, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, whether you're observing Torah or not. And my only agenda is that we all come to the full knowledge of Messiah and his understanding, and through that interactive relationship with his Holy Spirit. And we're supposed to be preparing a people for him, for his return, and in order for us to be able to prepare that people for him, we have to be at a certain place to do so. And if we're not loving, if we're straining on the gnat of whatever, it'll be more difficult to do that.
Yeah. I mean, this is such a, I love this conversation. Hopefully, people do as well. And not that we're even special or that we're anything. It's just,
I am.
yeah. Well, we know that you are. I mean, you've done, you've stand in front of crowds of like 30,000 people before. So, hey, that makes you, in the world's eyes, definitely a little bit more special than the guy that's,
God thinks I'm special too.
Yeah. Hey, I think you know what, self-confidence is a tough thing for me, but I would, holding on to, if you're out there and you deal with that issue, knowing that you're, fearfully and wonderfully made, that's a tough, for somebody like me, where we maybe deal with, specific issues, uh, self-esteem, issues you may have had your whole life, coming to that realization, especially as you spiritually mature, coming back to that and realizing how, that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. And um, there's a song out there, um, and if you watched our show with Jeremiah Dirk, there's this guy. His name is Pigeon John, and there's a song. It's just called B, letter B, and that song, really changed my perspective. And even though I still deal with it, but it changed my perspective on some things, and so be confident and know that he's created you special, and there's a purpose for you. And you know what, maybe we don't know what that purpose is and that plan is. I'll tell you this, I had no intentions, going on 3 years of even doing a video where people could actually see me, because I would never even want to do that. I have a terrible voice. I've been made fun of. Some people make fun of my voice all the time in the comment sections, especially when I was on IUCTV. So they had to delete those comments all the time.
What is wrong? What are they talking? What was wrong with your voice?
That's I don't want to feed the trolls. So if they haven't caught on to it,
I haven't caught on to it. I don't know what the heck you're talking about.
Great. I'll share that with you. I'm not going to feed the trolls, but
Sure.
no, so
I'll feed the trolls all day long.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So it's been funny, but dealing with even those things.
I'll put them on big baby chairs. Give them their little. There we go. Yeah. Oh yeah, all day long.
Yeah. So know that there's a plan for you. Know there's something that he has, something big for you, and something big. It may be, if you're out there struggling, to find the right, person that he has for your life, to share your life with, and maybe you're called to be a father or a mother, and it's going to be in his timing. Just wait for that. Know that that's, if whatever that plan is, it's going to happen. And walk in his ways, his commandments, through love and obedience. And that's where the true blessings come. The true blessings don't come because you did what the Pharisees and Sadducees did, who did all those things. It comes from truly, that intention of the heart, why you do what you do. And I know so many people, and that's kind of, the whole thing about Take on the World this year. And you mentioned a little bit of, and you said, and I always took it back to, something that you said in the group, in one of the chats one day. Somebody wrote in there, how do I bring my family to Torah? And you wrote in there, you don't bring people to Torah, you bring people to Jesus.
Yeah.
And we mentioned that before, putting the cart before the horse. And I think, what we have done in replacing Christ and taking away that he is person, entity, God, that we've taken those things away and we've replaced it with, that we have the facts, and we have the scripture that tells us he is the living Torah, right? So then all of a sudden, the list of do's and don'ts become Christ, and we've just replaced him with these things, when these are the mechanisms of how he wants to be loved, but and let's go back to that verse where it says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. See, what we do is that we take that verse and say, if I love him, I will keep my commandments. If we agape him, we will keep the commandments. Our focus is on the commandments. Here's the problem. His focus isn't on that. His focus is on, if you unconditionally love me. See, that's what it's on. If you don't agape him like he agapes us, then you can't keep his commandments. So the focus is on, do we love him or not? Because if we do love him, by default, we're going to keep his commandments.
That's what it says. That's what it says there. So it's really scary. All these people that aren't, Can I share a little testimony real quick?
Go for it. This is the secret show. Do what you want.
Okay. So I'm not gonna give you the big lead into the story to the part I want to share, because it's, I don't want to take that much time. But so I'm in my garage, and when I lived in Dallas, I'm in my garage. My garage was holy. It was a bit of a portal. It was nice because easy access. So I'm praying to the Father, and I'm laying down all these things at the foot of his son's cross, my bank account, my skill sets, my abilities, my talents, my giftings, my intellect, and then, you get even more granular, your wife, your kids, and so right, I'm laying all these things at the feet of the feet of the cross. And I'm done, and I'm done. I mean, I've exhausted myself. I'm poured out like a drink offering, right? And I'm sitting there, and he goes, "You done?" Oh man, that was offensive. I mean, there was nothing more offensive than that. I mean, I've just poured myself out, and your response is, "Are you done? You done?" Oh my gosh. And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm done." And he goes, "Good." Because all that, he probably said crap, but all that stuff you just laid at the foot of my son's cross, that's already mine. It's already all mine. And then he goes, "You bring nothing to the table." Oh my God. Now, I'm the guy that always has something to bring to the table. I always bring something to the table. And I remember, for so many years, I knew the art director for The Price is Right. And he wanted, his identity wasn't in being the art director for The Price is Right. Because I used to live in LA. His identity was, he wanted his identity to be, son of the living God, servant of God, and I could never wrap my mind around that. Or Moses being like the most humblest man on earth. I could never wrap my mind around that. All throughout the 80s, the 90s. I mean, I'm having this moment in 2006. And he goes, "You bring nothing to the table." And I was like, oh my God. And I just fell on my face and mercy, Father, have mercy. Have mercy on me. Because if I bring nothing to the table and I think I'm the guy that, in the world, I can always bring something to the table. But if I don't bring anything to the table in this relationship, in this regard, I'm at his full mercy. And so I just fell on my face, man, and cried out for mercy. And it changed my life. It changed my life. It was almost like being born again. You know what I'm saying? It changed my life. And that was like 13 years ago. It changed my life because it was like, his rules of engagement it's so necessary for us to understand those rules of engagement and this process and the protocol, because there's a protocol. And because we're talking a lot about love here, and it's this love, this understanding. Again, like we talked earlier, I don't want your bulls and goats. I want a sacrifice of thanksgiving. I want your heart. I want your being, your essence. I want covenant relationship with you. And I want that reciprocated based on your understanding of these dynamics that we're talking about. But that changed my life, man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't bring anything to the table. Mercy, God's mercy. God, Father God, have mercy on my life so that I can serve you, so that I can be a good steward, so that I can represent you, so that I can help in the process of letting the entire world know that there's an Elohim in Israel. I want to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant." I want to be a good and faithful servant. And I need his mercy to do that.
No, thanks for sharing that.
Thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah, that's well. That's a great reminder. And I think as we all try to figure this out, as we continue, moving forward, as you know, and I'll take it back. Allan, you're going to be talking about the book. You're going to be sharing about the feast at the conference again. And you'll do a beach chat, and you'll do some things, some other things there too. But as we move forward, coming off of unleavened bread, and I'll bring it right back to that. This should be our challenge for next year. When we all, focus on unleavened bread, is daily really picking out things in our life daily, and being so humble, to allowing the Father to reveal those things to us all week long, and we can start those things now, but really when we're commanded to do it, from next year moving forward, I want to see the internet flooded with those testimonies of how he worked in our lives, all unleavened bread, of all the things that and we can share with the community, things that we can use, people to help us in. Maybe there are addictions, maybe there are things that we're holding on to, and that we can share those, and get some support staff, in that regards. I see that as the true mission, rather than, just posting pictures of how we concocted, of how we, made, an unleavened bread recipe. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But what I am saying is this is the focus, and that should be our, our true encouragement next year, to start that process, because, that's the real reason behind that. That is exactly the reason why, if you're out there and you don't know that Paul, who was teaching a bunch of Gentiles that were converting over, who are no longer Gentiles, and he was telling them to keep these feasts.
Yeah.
And these were the reasons he was telling them to keep the feast, because they were all about Christ, that they are a shadow of him, which means they are him. My shadow is still me, right? It's a shadow, but it's still me, and that's what these feasts are, and his feasts are him. Shadow doesn't mean something that's not me, or that's not him, and I hear that argument all the time. That my shadow is me, your shadow is you, Christ's shadow happens to be the feast. And Paul makes it very clear in those passages. And so, if we can reveal those in those ways, that, how Paul did it, and all these things, we can see that, right? How it's going to work. We're going to be able to share these truths. It's not going to be weird. It's not going to be offensive. It's not going to be Jewish. It's not going to be anything other than, you just revealed Jesus's feast to me. You just revealed, I've heard testimonies of people who read your book. One of the guys that we both know, you shared the book with him, and he just told me, wow, I just saw the revelation of Christ in its full from everything he did to everything he's about to do. That's powerful.
Someone said that about my book?
Yeah. But that's not about your book. That's about the thing you talk about.
I understand that, but I don't hear. But it's good to know this stuff. I don't hear these testimonies. No one tells me these.
Yeah.
That's rad, man. That's like really thinking rad.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. It should get people so excited, because they're all about the one who saved their soul. John Pounders has a fantastic testimony where he got saved in prison, And being grown up in church and even going to Bible college, and then coming out and being involved in gangs and the drug game, all that stuff. Fantastic testimony if you guys haven't heard it. Salvation happened then. Salvation didn't happen when he came to the revelation of his feast, or keeping Sabbath, or wearing tzitzits, and doing and eating clean. That's not when salvation came. Spiritual maturity came because he just started reading the scripture from the beginning without any of his preconceived notions, and the scriptures became crystal clear. These things were called to do, and yet he didn't. That wasn't his salvation. This was spiritual maturity, right? And so
Yeah.
if we're not, and that's how we should be treating our brothers and sisters who were just like us, and yet if we don't remember, if we keep Passover, but yet we're not focused on the time that he saved us, that story, that redemption plan of all these spring feasts, he did it for you and your personal story. That's not only a time to remember what he did at those times, but he did it for you. So remember that time that he did it for you. This is a personal connection. This is individual, personal connection. I always say this, when we look up at the sun, moon, and the stars, because this is when he created these feasts in Genesis 6 or Genesis 1:14. I always say that Genesis 1:14, where the sun, moon, and the stars were created for the times, days, and for the seasons. And that word is the Moedim, right? And so the redemption for mankind was created in creation. His death, burial, resurrection, his second coming in creation. And it's all in the movement of the sun, moon, and the stars. And that in itself should give you goosebumps every time you look up at the sun, moon, and the stars and know the redemption for you to come into relationship with him and to live eternally with him was created in creation, and it's revealed in that perfect plan. And so that is super exciting, and that isn't for a group of people who don't believe in him. That's for those that have been grafted into his chosen people. And if you have bad theology on Paul, guess what? If you have that, you're still coming to the party. If you have a really bad understanding of Acts 10 and the Peter's vision, you're still coming to the party. Spiritual maturity, teach. Let's walk with each other in these areas and lead with love.
Rick Joyner has a great book that he wrote a few years ago, and it's about his he went to heaven. What he's talking about, going to heaven and meeting like Paul and seeing this whole thing, and how based on our, like you just said, understanding, or they're still there, but their closeness to like the epicenter, they're farther, based on certain things, they're further away from that epicenter.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, for example, sometimes it's like going to a show, a concert or whatever. There, that the artist might be, way over there, and you're in the room, but your proximity is based on the relationship you have or don't have with that artist. Then there's other
Mm-hmm.
artists where I'm on the guest list and I'm backstage, I'm in the green room. There's other artists where I might be sitting near the sound man, or my proximity to the artist is based on that relationship. I might be in the front row. I might be on stage in the wings. It's the same idea based on certain criteria. And though they thought they were in outer darkness, it wasn't like they were gnashing of teeth because they were still there. It was the proximity, Anyways, a fascinating book. I haven't read it yet. My son has, my wife has. I walked in on my wife who was reading it, and she looked like she was undone, man. And I'm like, "Are you okay?" She's like, the Holy Spirit was all over her, and I'm like, "What the heck's going on?" And she was reading this book. She got up early that particular morning. She was reading this book because it was expanding her. It was just there's revelation in it. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't read it yet, but it's that type of thing. Yeah, you're still invited to the party.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he's calling us all to, worship him in spirit and truth. Obviously that is
Absolutely.
the key.
He
And
wants his desire for us is far deeper than I think a lot of us understand, comprehend, realize. And the depth of that is determined on our right. Do you want to be a 20% believer, a 40%? There's a parable of the sower. I want 100% return on my investment, and there's only like 2 accounts of that in the entire biblical narrative of
right. Well,
100% return.
right. Well, you have the churches, that all the letters were being written to. You have you have the lukewarm church, and you have all these different churches that all had all these certain problems, right? And then you had some churches that were doing some right things. Hey, I don't know what that prophetic aspect truly means, which I don't think anybody has. I've heard so many different ideas on it that I think we're all grasping for straws. But I think there's a lot of lessons that we can take away from that, and so it's not like we're saying everybody's okay if they don't ever hey, there's truth that there's truth that people that he's designed to come to. If you're out there, when it comes to health, he's got an instruction for us how he wants us to eat. And I take it very spiritually. A lot of people take it very physically and say, here's our list of do's and don'ts. But if we take a look at that spiritual nature of that law, and we know that this unclean food causes sickness, death, it causes us to be extremely unproductive. Toxins, parasites, the list goes on and on, right? I can spend, a whole biblical health show talking about those. But if we come over to the spiritual aspect of the law that Paul talks so heavily about, that we can learn this very quickly and very easily is, look at our dinner plate and it says, if this leads us to life or does this lead us to death? I think we have the understanding right there. Is this our is this what he's telling us? I mean, if we're eating heavily laden, if I hear this all the time, people are so focused on the gelatin in their food, but the foods that most likely contain gelatin have probably 10 times worse things for you than gelatin in them. But if it was a kosher version of the gelatin and it was beef gelatin, but it had all those other ingredients that would have been 10 times worse if it was pork, it's on the menu. And you go, let's look at it as a spiritual. He's teaching us something. Look at these through that spiritual lens. And I know this. He's got grace for us in this area, of this area. I've known people who have had long careers in ministry who have had ministries for 70 60 80 years, and they didn't have a great stance on their health because they had bad theology, and somehow the Lord still blessed them in this manner. And but we do know the flip side. We do know that people are dying daily because they're unreluctant to look at his instruction of how we should eat, and then that teaches us all the things about how we should eat, what things we should put into our bodies, because it's also this spiritual connection of what we should watch with our eyes, what we should listen with our ears. All of these things, this aspect of what we put in is I know we have the passages that tell us it's not what comes in, it's what comes out, right? But it happens to be when we're talking about music and media and even food, because we know that there's a connection. I don't mean to go, health on us, but there's a connection to bacteria and our attitude. So when our bacteria is off because we eat poorly and there's toxins and parasites, it affects our attitudes, our moods. So there's an aspect of all of that which can be corrected if we're just walking in his spiritual realms of saying, should I do this? Should I not do that? But if we look at it as a list of do's and don'ts, we miss that whole entire picture. And that's what's so important. And I know I'm rambling again, but I wanted to make this other quick point is growing up in churches, if we all grew up in churches, we knew that there was probably one or two or three, if you went to a small church, there was most likely one old granny who was in the church who probably didn't have the greatest theological understanding of everything. She loved Jesus, but here's the thing. She acted like Jesus. She was the first to greet you. She was the first to tell you she's praying for you. She's the first one to bring, the pregnant mom, a meal, and she just loved and was a servant. And yet, see, she may not have had all these, understanding theologically, but that the Father was pleased with her because she just loved. And that's what, now that we have the knowledge, but now if we can come back to, the heart, and we've had so many great examples. I know them in my life. I'm sure you know them in your life, and I'm sure everybody who's out there go, yeah, we had somebody like that. That's what we're called to do. That's what we're called to be. And if we can package that with truth and spirit, then I think we're achieving what we've been called to achieve. And and that's going to be a journey, and that's what I always try to go back to is, are we that, loving people that just loved others and met them where they were at, just loved on them. And you know um, everybody knows who, you probably all have somebody in your lives that's just like that too. So
Yeah. Yeah, we do. It's important. It's, again, fellowship, brotherhood of the saints. I mean, it talks about it.
mhm.
Talks all about it.
So why don't you tell me, so now I think we rambled for a long time on that, but before we sign off, because I think we're over 2 hours now, which is,
Is
these shows
this
aren't supposed to be. Yeah.
is this where you give
So
me the hot potato questions now?
yeah, so let's jump into some some hot seat questions.
Hot seat
Uh,
questions.
yeah, I'm gonna um
Is this kind of like the
let's
David Letterman brush with greatness? Remember those questions? Those are great.
yeah, I do. Yeah. Wow, I had some for you. All right. You said I could do. I'll give you. I said I wasn't going to do a flat Earth question, but I guess I will do one for you. Okay. All right. So you can answer this question with a your own opinion. You can answer it with an I don't know. I'll take an I don't know. Or a better question is I'll have to look into that. So you ready? Here we go.
All right.
Okay. So, and you fully understand the geocentric heliocentric model, right?
I understand what you guys are talking about. Yeah.
Okay. So the heliocentric model is that the sun is at the center, right? And um, we revolve around the sun, all that kind of stuff, right? Okay. So that's the kind of the basics. Here's one foundational aspect of the heliocentric model is that in the heliocentric model, the sun is vital to have been formed before the earth. Okay. In the model, it teaches us that the sun created the Earth from the sun, from the solar nebulas of a young sun. Okay, so we've got the sun. I think it's like 14 billion, and they claim the Earth is 4.5 billion. You most likely probably don't believe that. Okay, so if you have the Earth come before the sun, the whole model is destroyed. Okay, the opening line of the Bible states that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and he created the sun on day 4. So how do you wrap the heliocentric model into Genesis 1:1 that clearly states that the earth comes before the sun?
I don't have a problem with the fact that he could be the light. He's the light. I mean, he's light, and he was light, but it doesn't. But it was formless and void. There wasn't any. There wouldn't also not be any necessary and any need for light. What's the light for at that point? There's nothing on the earth is formless and void, so there's no necessarily no actual need for light. He wouldn't need it because he's going to be able to see it regardless. And I think it might be an issue of trying to understand something with our rational, limited understanding as humans. I mean, for me, there's an earth. I actually subscribe to the Genesis gap theory, so that the formless earth, formless void and covered with water is the first flood. And
do you believe in two creation accounts then?
no, because there's creation, and then he just wiped it out and started over again, and that's our Genesis account. I mean,
Well, David
flood,
David
after the
David
Noahic
Carrico has an
flood,
interesting
there isn't
teaching
necessarily
on.
a creation.
Yeah. Well, what I'll say is David Carrico has an interesting teaching on Genesis 1 being a creation event, and then Genesis 2 being a separate creation event.
Right, the gap theory.
Yeah. So, that's what I'm asking. Do you prescribe to that
Okay,
aspect of it then?
sure.
Okay.
I've never said it.
Okay.
I've never used the term second creation. The gap
Okay.
theory basically states that there's this pre-Adamite society. God wipes it out. That's why the earth is formless and void, and the then we have our creation account.
Awesome.
And
Okay. Well, this is
I don't.
perfect. So now I have the
Yeah,
second
I don't
question for you.
necessarily. I don't. Okay.
Okay, you ready? Okay. So,
Yeah.
all right. So we got that one out of the way. That was the one. So hopefully I'll get you to think a little bit deeper. So I believe the Earth came first, but here we go. God's Torah always existed in some degree. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
His moral. Okay.
So
So one of
Adam, Cain and Abel had to be taught regarding sacrifices for a reason by somebody. Noah takes 7 pair of clean animals, not just a pair of each. Right? We're told that he took a pair of each. Right? They leave out the 7 pairs of clean. Why? They had to eat. Torah was always in effect. Moses is just the prophetic scribe that was chosen to write it down or to be given it.
right. So there was so we agree on that. Okay. So moving forward, here's the question. All right. So incest is a abomination unto the Lord. Agree, disagree?
Agree.
Okay. So here's the question. Did the formation of man from creation begin with, well, and you've kind of maybe already given this away, but did the creation of all mankind include in God's plan, in Yahweh's perfect plan that Torah always existed, which incest was an abomination, did that include incest of the population of the earth?
It would have to have. It would have had to have.
Well,
There aren't any other human beings unless see, we don't know how long Adam and Eve were in the garden before the fall. So what if, well, no, because it doesn't work. There's no way for other humans to exist on the planet that they could breed with or procreate with, unless it was essentially, at least fundamentally and basically and originally, with a sibling.
well, if you look at Genesis 1, um, it said he created male and female in his, and yet in the second creation of Adam and Eve, you have Eve being created from male, from Adam.
You're not suggesting Lilith, are you?
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying it's an interesting subject,
That's gonna
because if we say that Torah has always existed,
but I also
incest is okay.
know that God can do whatever the heck he wants. And
Yeah.
he does.
Well,
And he does break his own rules.
yeah. Well, hey, I'm gonna throw this out there to everybody. I'm gonna try to get David Carrico on. We'll talk about this subject, which is a fascinating, fun subject to talk about. Is it going to cause division and debate? Only if you let it. And or debate's good, but if it's going to cause division, only if you guys let it. So it's going to be, I'll try to get him to have fun. That'll be a fun show. I've heard his presentation on it. I'll have Allan make sure that you tune in and check it out. So it's an interesting perspective. So those were the hot seat questions that I had for you tonight. And I'll give you another fun question. As a performer, what was your favorite show that you ever did? And tell us a little bit about that.
I'm going to say I've always said that it was Cornerstone Festival 1991. And I say that because how close it was and how new it was to the launching of that particular band at that point. So I had a band. I started in 1983. We did it for a couple years. Then I went and did something else. And then I came back around 89 or mid 89 and decided to do that band again. I thought, okay, it's been 6 or 7 years. The Christian market has matured at least a little bit. I think we can probably do this band again, and it'll take off. It'll be huge, because there was this underground phenomena that had occurred for a few years.
Which was definitely, and Cornerstone was the mecca for all that.
Right. And there was this underground phenomena that occurred for years that brought this band to like this mythical position, because no one had ever seen it. It was like a myth. There's this band, but we have the music from like way back over here, So it's here's from the time I decided to do that band again, find a new drummer, rewrite some old songs, write new songs, play a handful of shows, sign to a major label, make a record, and release it 10 months. That doesn't happen.
Wow. Yeah.
You don't do that in 10 months. You don't go from it's like, when you switch Darren in the middle of a season on Bewitched, you don't do that. You don't make such a drastic stop doing this, start doing this, and then 10 months later you're headlining, you're headlining one of the biggest festivals with this new record. You don't do that in 10 months. So then a year.
So were you main stage?
Not for year one. So
no.
Year two. So it's only 20. It's less.
Which would have been 91,
right?
Okay.
So it's less than 2 years later. They had main stage, but they had encore, which was the late night main stages. So there's 3 encore stages. Encore 1, 2, and 3. We were playing encore 2. Adam again was playing encore 1. They actually delayed their set by 30 minutes to come and watch ours. So I say it's my best or favorite show, because the amount of buzz, the buzz in the air about the band and our being there again for our second year, playing this larger stage. There was like over 4,000 people at that one show, and that's about 25% of the audience. So 25% of this festival, give or take, came to see us on purpose. And
who was on 3?
I don't know. I don't know who was on 3.
It's probably DC Talk, right?
Maybe there was DC Talk didn't play Cornerstone. That didn't happen until like years and years later.
Yeah. So they didn't have any of the CCM bands play in the early 90s?
Not originally, no. That didn't happen until like a long time later. Yeah.
Not much longer. It would have been what, like 97, 98, something like that?
Towards the end of the 90s, early 2000s, they started bringing in stuff like that. Maybe there was only 2 encore stages, but I know it was Adam again, and Gene worked on our record. Gene engineered the record, and I'd known Gene from Adam again from like back in '83, so we knew each other. We had a working relationship, we had a personal friendship, so there was that. But I say that's the best show or my favorite show because the amount of the buzz and the hype and the all of that, plus the sheer number of the audience, and and they're singing along and stuff. It was really special. It was definitely that, and then February of '92 at the Club Post Nuclear in Laguna Beach in your own in Southern California, and you're playing this massive, incredible. I don't know how many people were at that show. Those 2 shows spike in my memory. Cornerstone 91, Laguna Beach, February 92. Just epic. I've got footage I've got the whole show for 92. I'll be putting up on YouTube at some point.
Did anybody any of the CCM artists, did any of them ever reach out to you and tell you they appreciate what you're doing, anything like that?
Yeah, a lot of them, more than I would imagine, but yeah, they all knew. Yeah.
I mean, obviously a lot of them went on to do a little bit more probably edgier things, or not for them, and they were coming out of the the 80s where it had to be
right.
You probably had to have a sweater, sweater with bright colored pants on for your album cover, right? So everybody had to do that, and then eventually they could get a little bit more edgy, or they could add a little bit more rock flair to their albums or something like that, right?
Yeah. Well, it's been well documented that what we did opened up the door for Christian rock to be edgier, harder, better. Yeah.
Well, I would say all genres of the alternative to radio, Christian radio, whether it's the grunge era, you guys heavily influenced, to even opening the doors. I think a lot of even in the hip hop pioneers, they forget to pay homage to what your guys and what your era did, because it was you were the first taboo bands to start to be able to play at festivals, churches, those things, which then paved way for eventually to respect all genres that weren't traditional to the churches.
Yeah.
And they had I would say right now hip hop through Lecrae dominates the Christian charts, but back in the early mid 90s, they wouldn't have been able to play any of these festivals because they would have been extremely frowned down upon. And here you guys doing extreme punk rock, and you guys are probably very instrumental, and I know we've talked about this in the formation of all those other record labels like Tooth and Nail. Some of those things that kicked off Solid State Records. Some of those things doing some more alternative style stuff.
And we also had a hand in introducing like legitimate reggae to Christian music as well. So yeah, so I do, and yes, um, there a lot of stuff wasn't happening in Christian rock until we did what we did, and then it would still take a good 3 or 4 years for people to go, oh, we can do this. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a
Well, what was that? What was that? What was
time.
that Christian band that was um some of the other pioneers of punk that were out there? 80s.
Well, in 1983, when we started Scattered Few, sorry, I wasn't sure. There was only one other band, and we played shows with them. It was, remember the band Undercover?
Undercover. Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So the main guy from Undercover who played keyboard, his younger brother Pat had a band called Immortal Youth, and we did shows together as early as May of 1983, and that was it, because everybody else, they weren't actually punk. I mean, they were being sold as Christian punk, but they weren't punk at all. Not even a little bit.
Well,
So
what about the band I was thinking was One Bad Pig?
I don't talk about One Bad Pig.
Is a sore subject? Is that should have been the hot seat question?
It's not a sore subject. It's just there was nothing punk rock about One Bad Pig. Not even, I mean, nothing. Literally,
Yeah.
absolutely, completely nothing. That's why, I think it's ridiculous that I mean, I don't.
Yeah, they get classified that their album, their feel that looked like it, but it wasn't, right?
They didn't even look like it. Here's the thing: you've got a bunch of Christian kids, or you have a bunch of Christians that didn't know punk rock, knew nothing about punk rock, and were never punk rock, saying what was punk rock to other Christians who wouldn't know. Right? It's the equivalent of Christians telling us anything about Passover or the feast, or it's ridiculous. It's the same thing.
Well, that's good to know. I always
we're
thought that they were.
We're sitting there going, oh my gosh, dude. So Scatterfew started off as a ministry to the homeless street punk of Hollywood. We're talking about the homeless street punk of Hollywood. We're talking really, really rough scene in the streets of Hollywood. And Christians were out there handing these punks Undercover cassettes. And we were just like, oh my God, you can't do that. You're making our job harder. Because if they even bother to put it on, they're going to go, what the heck is this? It was an absolute, complete, grotesque misrepresentation of a musical genre, and my God.
Well, I would say it's very similar to DC Talk. So DC Talk, they were pumping that out as hip hop, so that they're handing this out to the street, where in the ghettos where they were going, this is not hip hop, this is not this stuff, right? And it was making, some of those early pioneers of that were doing stuff.
I agree. Yeah. I absolutely agree, because see, I'm going to turn on NWA, or I'm going to turn on Fear of a Black Planet. I'm going to put those two records on before I do anything else, right? But I have a question. So you've brought up hip hop like 3 or 4 times. What's up with that? Why would you? What's up with that?
Well, I know it's an annoying factor for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, like I said, I kind of know about everything. So, if you watch a show with Dirt, we talked about it for a long time. But that's his genre. So yeah. But it makes sense.
Somebody brought up Christafari in the chat. Yeah.
That would be like saying that was reggae.
What's that?
That would be like saying that was reggae. Now, I will say this: if there are fans out there of Christafari, they definitely have become much more rooted in reggae essence over years.
Christafari has done legit reggae since the very beginning. Christafari, Mark's a good friend of mine. Well, I've known Mark a long time. I won't say he's a good friend of mine, but I've known Mark a long time. You know, we don't like hang out and, you know, but I mean, what
Send him your book.
Mark does, he does very, very well. These guys are hardworking. I mean, I'm. It's impressive that Mark is still doing what he's doing after, I mean, 30 years or something crazy, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it didn't start there. But that's okay. That's not what's important. What's important is that he's doing what he's doing, and he's doing it as well as that he's doing it, and he's still doing it, and it's really, really good. He's doing a
Yeah,
really
I
good
thought,
job.
yeah. Well, if you look back at,
I have a massive
their first,
problem. I have a massive problem with their name, but that's besides the point.
yeah, I would say, when you look back at their history of, being on Goatee Records, I think there was a
That was
complete misplacement.
that was a long time ago.
Yeah, where well, that was their first, records, and it was just a weird placement because I knew friends that they would go to the Christian festivals back in the day, and they were like, yeah, they would. I remember this band. There was a reggae band. It was so weird, and they had like 15 people on stage, and they had all these instruments, right? And it was like, and I'm just like going, it's just not their scene. That's not their scene. Like, and it was being pushed to a circle that had no clue what they were getting
Right.
into,
Did
and
did
I
you
think
go to any festivals?
I didn't start going to festivals until it wasn't until the heyday was over. It was 2002.
Oh, geez. That's like
Yeah,
5 years late. I
yep, I
mean,
was
that's
about
like 5 years
5 years.
after the heyday.
Yeah,
What
so I
festivals
mean,
did you
but
go to?
yeah, so that's part. Obviously that's part of my story. I only was into secular music, and so that's why I'm so big about obviously the things that go into our ears. Um, you know, even not doing any of the things that were in the music, but that music affected me in a way which pushed me further away from really following him.
Sure.
And that's why it was so important to just start to even just find artists that were putting out content that they love the Lord, and um, um, and it gave you something that you could be part of. And to be honest, it was like you became set apart really quickly.
Yeah. What
You
festival
listen
did you
to
go to?
well, I'm in Ohio, so we had kind of the Dud Festival, but there was a lot. They had a beach stage there, which was a live festival. So that was kind of the only festival that I ever got to go to as a
What was the name of
festival.
it?
The Alive Festival.
Alive.
Yeah, it's going on like year 30 or something, so it's been around for a long time. Yeah, it was. They had a beach stage, um, which was really cool. They had their CCM stage. They had a wood stage, which was really was all the light stuff. And then they did do a pretty good job of a beach stage for a while. Um, and they would bring in a lot of really good alternative acts, and they did a lot of that kind of stuff, and it really ministered to lots of people, and mostly kids that were completely broken,
Yeah.
and I think that's the thing, there's so many people out there that forget, broken people um are ministered to things that they're familiar with. And so I mean, I've seen them firsthand account, and so obviously you've probably gotten tons of testimonies and those things of people coming from complete brokenness, being homeless, and all those things, and being part of these cultures, and finding a band like yours, I mean, my goodness, I mean, you're a Torah album, even if you didn't know it, it was called Sin Disease, right?
Yeah.
That first record,
There's
and
there's Hebrew names on that album.
yeah,
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 for a reason.
yeah, like, yeah. I mean, it was, but again, you were already being revealed that stuff,
Yeah.
real early on, and so yeah, that's pretty cool. As people do that, and I think there's a lot to, you know, some of the most grimiest, festivals, and not that Cornerstone produced, all good fruit. There was a lot of things that Cornerstone had wrong, and um, I've heard some horror stories, and
I know
there's plenty of,
I know some horror stories.
yeah, there's from drug use, but there was a lot of things that was that a lot of good fruit came from that, and I think you know
You know what I realized the other day?
what's that?
Jawbone of an Ass is 25 years old this summer.
Are you gonna do anything with it?
No, I'll just let everybody know. But so for the 25th anniversary of Sin Disease, we released it on vinyl, remastered it, and
Hmm.
on vinyl. But yeah, Jawbone is 25 years this summer. That's crazy.
Which makes you what, like 86 now?
Yeah, right? I'm looking pretty damn good for 86.
Yeah,
You should
yeah,
see my Sarah.
yeah. What's your nighttime regimen?
I don't have a nighttime,
Avocado mask, or
nighttime regimen.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. I don't have
Did
a
you ever dye your Did you ever dye your hair? Another hot seat
Oh
question.
gosh, I've been dyeing my hair since I was a teenager.
Oh, really?
I stopped
So
dyeing
is
my
so is your so is your hair dyed now then?
No, I stopped dyeing my
Okay,
hair. I stopped dyeing my hair in 2003.
2003.
Yeah.
Were you were gray in 2003?
No, I didn't dye my hair because I was gray.
Oh, okay. All right, just checking, just checking. Hey, if you guys haven't seen any of the pictures of Allan when he performed, or any of those, you can still see the facial structure, but yeah, that's about it, right? I mean, you look totally different. So
Do I?
yeah,
Nah.
yeah, you do, yeah. Yeah, but you were young. You were a young man, so
I was
you
doing a
know,
lot of crazy stuff at a young age.
yeah.
You know. Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's pictures up there of me doing, when I was 19, pictures of me up there all throughout my 20s, my 30s, even my 40s. Yeah. Yeah.
50s, 60s,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, I forgot I'm 80 something now.
yeah. Well, hey, I normally don't do shows with grandpas, so this is a first for me. So, most everybody I have is hip. They're cool. They make me look good. This is
Yeah.
this time. I'm making you look good. Type of
Yeah.
approach. Uh, so if you guys
Awesome.
can tell,
That's
we're
awesome.
having a good time. This is how we love on one another, and you know, we can disagree about things, but we can have a blast, and spend time together. So here's what you're gonna miss if you guys don't come to Take on the World. You're gonna miss fellowship,
You're gonna miss Chad
and
Schaefer.
yeah, Chad Schaefer. I mean, come on, there it is. I mean, we're just gonna have a room where we're gonna put Chad in a box, glass box, and you guys can just come up and just look at him. I mean, it's super entertaining, and it's actually a blast.
That
So he's
sounds
not doing any sessions this year. We're gonna talk about that on the Secret Show. He's gonna be muted the whole time. I'm gonna mute him, and it's gonna be an awesome, awesome show. We're just gonna look at Chad. So
oh
yeah,
my
Chad's awesome. I'm kidding. Chad's gonna be doing a bunch of fun stuff. Live Disputed Lands, and Chad's gonna be sharing his heart on a few things. So you guys are gonna want to check that out. Um, so that's what you're gonna miss if you don't come Take on the World. We're gonna have fellowship, and we're gonna learn some things. We're gonna learn to love each other even when we disagree about things. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, we've won 2.5 hours, so this is episode 2. So I'm gonna let Allan, we'll close this out. because I know it's early for you still. I mean, you're in Utah,
Yeah.
and you're big,
And I'm going fishing in the morning.
You're going fishing, yeah. Just with all the, are you
It's my first
Am-
my first fishing trip this season. Pretty excited.
Nice. As a plant-based eater, I would just say throw it back. You don't, you don't need it.
I don't eat fish.
And no, what do? Just throw it back, or do you give it away?
So normally I'm fly fishing in the river. Tomorrow I'm going lake fishing because my buddy I'm going with is hurt his foot, so he's a little gimpy right now. No, I if I catch fish in the lake, I'll bring them home for everybody else to eat. Yeah,
Gotcha. Nice. So you are a nice guy.
They're native wild rainbow trout. They're not farmed. They're like salmon meat.
Yeah. And I heard you have a huge. You love catching catfish, feeding that to the family too, right? Somebody please, share, cut that out and share that all over.
Hey, somebody's saying there's a major snow blizzard going on. Where is this? Where are you from, Gabrielle?
I think Chicago was getting blasted.
Are you serious? Wow, I live in a ski resort.
Yeah, Chicago was getting hit.
I live in
Wisconsin, maybe Wisconsin.
Wow.
Yeah.
I live in a ski resort, and we haven't had snow in about 2 or 3 weeks. We're finally out of it, I'm pretty sure. And we had a lot of snow. We had record snow this season. She's in Pennsylvania. No. Somebody else is saying.
Pennsylvania.
Oh, no, they're saying, yeah. Pennsylvania's got some good trout fishing. Southern Alberta. Okay, I know where you are. Wow. Isn't it a little late for that much snow this time of year in Alberta? Maybe not. They're like, that's north, man. I'm about as north. I could maybe handle Seattle, but man, that's about it. So were you going to say you want me to say something as closing, or what were you?
Yeah. Unless if you have anything else you want to.
No, I'm good. I mean,
ramble about. I mean,
I just finished my new book.
This is what we do.
I'm really excited about my new book. Really excited about it. This thing is spiritual. You can get it at planetbluemedia.com. Really excited to hang out with you guys again at Take on the World. Very excited about that. Had a great time last year. I can't believe you're letting me.
You should do some. Yeah, I know. I am taking some heat for it, but hey, that's it's all good. Yeah,
Tell me you're joking. Are you seriously taking heat?
Well, from certain people that but hey, that's all right. We're not going to talk about that. It's all good.
Tell them to grow a pair and call me personally. If they know me and I know them and they're talking to you and giving you scriptural, but they won't. I know why. And I know why. Stupid. Stop being stupid. Not you, but these people. I hope you're watching. Stop being stupid. Call me. It's not like it's not like I'm impossible to find. Sheesh. Well, good. You know what? This gives them an opportunity to come talk to me when they see me in Ohio, if they even show up.
We will cut this portion out of our show.
Are you serious? Are you serious? This is love. This is me being loving. Right? Yeah. I'm leaving my sacrifice at the altar, and I'm coming to you and saying, I know you have a problem with me. You need to resolve it. That's biblical. I don't have a problem with them. They apparently have a problem with me.
Well,
I'm just trying to be a scriptural brother, man. That's all I try to do here. That's all. That's my only agenda. And if someone's got a problem with me and they're not coming and talking to me, but they're talking to you and giving you a hard time for letting me come to your conference, come on, dude. I'm from LA, dude. Street rules apply at that point, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, I'll tell you this. It's all love, everybody.
This sheep bites. This sheep bites. I'm the
tame guy. So okay, so Planet Blue Media. We're gonna pull back Planet Blue Media. You get 2 fantastic books there. You can also probably pick up some music on that site as well.
Not yet.
Correct?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No.
Okay.
On purpose, but we want to. We want to we want to start on rolling out some music for these people.
Awesome.
Not street
And
level, street rules, not street level. No, dude, I am way looking forward to coming back to take on the world. I thank you for having me. I know you're
why
going to
don't you tell us?
from
Why don't you
somebody.
give us a little? Okay, here's what I want you to do. Why don't you tell everybody what happened last year as an overall feel? So if there's somebody new that didn't come, you know, if I say it from my mouth,
Sure,
it doesn't
I
really mean
understand.
too much. But hey, what if it comes from the guy that, you know, rocked all these stages?
That's
Maybe that
on
means
people's
yeah.
poo-poo
And
list.
these earrings, yeah, unless if they can't get past the look of your earrings.
I have
So.
earrings, and apparently I'm on people's poo-poos list for coming back to your conference. Um, that's me editing myself right there. It was okay. Here's funny. There was a spirit of unity there that only lasted until I left, and then they all freaked out.
Yeah.
There was a great spirit of unity there. I felt. I mean, everybody. Well, there's a lot of flat earthers there, and people.
A lot.
There was a lot. There was a lot more than I've ever. There's more than I'm.
Because we've all come to truth. We
More
all
than
we
I
all we
ever
all
hung
worship
out
the
with.
spirit in truth.
Yeah. And and so everyone assumed that I was, and they made an ass out of them and me by doing so. But no one gave me a hard time. It wasn't like I never once felt uncomfortable over that topic. And that was probably like the only topic, because you had done, they were casting out a demon out of a girl. That's old hat. I mean, that's obviously part of my arsenal, my bag of trick. So that wasn't weird. And even the flat earth stuff wasn't weird. No one made me uncomfortable about the flat earth thing, which is why I'm saying there was like this spirit of unity there. There was a lot of unity. I felt it felt like family. It was. I think I told you this too. I think it's an important gathering. I think the gathering that you and your wife have put together, Take on the World, I think it's a very important gathering.
Well, we had 70 sessions. 20 of them revolved around biblical cosmology. So 50 of them.
Right.
I'll tell you if yeah, they didn't. So there's so many topics, so many stages, so many things for you to do. It's sort of like going to a music festival. Is how I kind of plan this whole thing. Is if you don't like this, you don't have to go listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
If you like that, you can go listen to that. And that's how we kind of set it up. So you could get exactly what you need from the conference. Not only that, but how you want to be ministered to. And if you had that inkling to go check out something, that maybe is new to you. So many people came for one topic, and then they went into, for example, they went into Allan's, or they went into Zach and Darren's session and learned about apologetics, which is a play on apologetics. It was a really good, clever thing that the presentation they did. And, they learned so much, and they were there to learn about X, Y, and Z, but they really, learned all about these things. And so that's super.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that's super important. That's kind of what the whole goal is for. So, it's a family event, full kids, teens program. Everybody's going to have something for them, and the fellowship by far. Everybody puts their heart and souls into the presentation, but just the fellowship of us fellowshipping together in spirit and truth, is really the goal. And it's a blast.
Yeah, I liked it enough to come back.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's kind of good. Hey, it's not Cornerstone, but hey, we're working on it. So,
dude, I'm like I said, I'm honored to be invited back. I love the fact that I'm getting to come back. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm excited to be there again. I really enjoyed it. I was incredibly blessed, and in my experience of doing this stuff for how many years, says a lot about you and Liz, and that's awesome.
Well, perfect, guys. Well, I'm gonna close out. It's almost 1 o'clock our time. So if you guys stayed with us, I couldn't see any of the chat. It's all kind of coming in really funny for me. So I can't go in there and say anything. So I appreciate everybody for watching. Hey, we got some great shows coming up this week. We've got Disputed Lands on Monday. We got so much coming up, and these secret shows are just going to pop up. So I think tonight, I hope they didn't do a midnight ride. I saw something that they weren't, so that's why we did this tonight, because we don't want to compete with our brothers over there. And obviously David and John, they always bring it, but I think they didn't do it. And then I'm not sure if Robbie and Nate had their show because he's out of the country. So, but these secret shows, they're going to pop up, and there's no rhyme or reason. We're going to kind of talk about anything and everything, and just have kind of a blast. So this is what was on our hearts. So, every time we talk, that's our conversations. So again, until next time, you guys have a great night. Allan, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Until the next time, we'll see you guys.